Hello and welcome to the Vlogging Pod. Tonight we are joined by Don Akchin. Welcome to the room, Don. Did I say your name correctly? I'm always so bad on pronunciation.
Well, we're the only ones in captivity, so it would be hard not to hard to know how to say it. I usually say auction,
Akchin, okay.
but I'll take anything close.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm horrible on it. I'll tell you, but usually people get my name wrong too. I'll say Ari and I'll get Erie and Aaron. And so
Okay.
I don't, it just kind of flows over me, but that's all right. I'm just the worst on pronunciation. I usually ask Google to or pronunciate it for me because I'm like, oh my gosh, some people really have some tongue twisters. And I'm like, I'm just not that well rounded. So, how are you this evening? How's
I'm
everything
well.
going in your world?
Good, thank you.
Well,
Very pleased to be
wonderful.
on your podcast.
Well, I love to have you here. It's always nice to have someone to sit around and chat with, and books are our corner of the world here.
Okay.
So, the, what first inspired you to rethink traditional idea of retirement?
Oh, well, that's easy. I retired, and it was nothing like what I expected. So that got me thinking. And to be truthful, in my retirement, what I have done after I found my way, found my footing, which took about 4 years, I've started writing weekly a a blog about aging and about trying to find the positive sides of it. And in all of that research, I found that retirement had really changed in a way that I don't think people appreciate. And so that got me into doing more research and turning out the book.
Hmm. Okay. And the book we're talking about is The End Game, correct?
No, the book we're talking about is called The Afterwork,
Oh, the Afterwork. Okay.
Finding Fulfilling Alternatives to Retirement.
Okay. Now, you have a page though with the end game. Tell me about what that's all about.
The end game is that weekly column that I write about aging, and
Oh, okay.
I've been doing that for 4.5 years.
Nice. All right. I get you. So when we talk about your book, how long did that start and when did you finish it exactly?
It took 3 years to think it through and research it and write it and rewrite it and rewrite it and then get it published. And it appeared in September of last year.
Now tell me the difference between the Afterwork and the column you write for the end game.
Well, the end game talks about all aspects of retirement, all aspects of aging.
Mhm.
We don't dwell much on the physical ailments or the finances, but almost everything else is fair game.
Oh,
Whereas the afterwork is really focused on the retirement experience itself and what to do about it.
okay. I get you. I don't think there's enough for after retirement, to be honest with you. I don't think there's enough information that you can get, especially is because it's continually changing. Every year there should be a different way, even living right now because of money that you may have and the cost of living. And that even dribbles into your work cycle if you choose to continue, right? After your retirement.
Sure. Well, the point of view I take with the book is that the old-fashioned idea of retirement, which maybe our parents enjoyed or our grandparents, just doesn't exist anymore, and that's because 90% of people in America can't afford it.
Mm.
They can't really afford to go to the beach and drink pina coladas all day and never work again, and I object to the word retirement because I think that the way we've seen retirement for years has been as the end of life. You know,
Mm,
after you
mhm,
stop working, it's only a few years till you die, so retire and live it up and do whatever
mhm.
you can afford. That's just not the case anymore. What we have now are people living longer lives So if you retire at 60 or 65, there's a good chance that you're gonna live another 25 or 30 years. And if you've got that much time, you've got time to start something new. And to me, it's a great opportunity to do that thing that you wanted to do when you were a kid and didn't do because it wasn't practical enough. But now you have the freedom to do it, and the stakes are minimal. Nobody's gonna suffer financial hardship if it doesn't work. You don't have to worry about the mortgage by now. You probably don't have to worry about the kids. So, you've got the right to fail and to try again and to keep experimenting and finding something that really means something to you. And in the book, I suggest, there's basically about 4 paths. Keep working at something that you really love, work part-time, volunteer for something that you believe in, or start a new business, or take that creative thing that you wanted to do, like play the saxophone and
Run a podcast, yeah. Mhm.
or run a podcast
Yeah.
and 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 monetize it, or don't monetize it,
Mhm.
just have
Yeah,
fun with it. So that's
right.
that's the book in brief.
I get that. You know, what really speaks to me, and most people might get tired of me talking about it, because on my podcast, when I have these conversations, and one of the big things fundamentally about my podcast is within the last years, I have wanted to talk more about aging, what happens after you reach a certain age and you've left one job and refocus your life. See, I'm trying not to use the word retirement like you were saying. So, and the reason my mind has went there is because, well, my father, we lost about 3 years now,
Mm,
and because of, well, he retired, but it seemed like he became very sedentary, and my husband and I are in our 50s, and so my husband's always like, "Oh, I'm waiting for retirement and stuff," and I'm like, "No, I don't want you to," and he goes, "Oh, you just want me to work to," I'm like, "No, it's not that. It's not saying you have to keep your same job. I just think that it's great to keep busy, you know? I think if you have the income and you can do leisure, like what you're saying, along the beach, there's still excitement. There's still something for the brain to still engage with. I think it's very important as we get older, and this, I'm only speaking from someone who's in their 50s, so, and only because my mother now lives with us. I mean, she lives in an apartment across from my she shed. So I say that based on the knowledge that I've gained from since my parents have went through, my dad's passing and my mom here. I
right.
think it's very important that you engage in something that keeps your mind moving forward. I think we lose a lot when we become more sedentary. Not just so much your body, but your mind as well. And your mind is a vast muscle that we should still keep engaged with, you know? Am I
Well,
wrong, right?
I couldn't agree more, and I watched my mother's retirement, and it was sad. She hardly ever left the house.
Mhm.
She occupied herself either watching television or reading trashy novels, and eventually it turned into dementia, and then it was even worse. And I thought for years she should try to go out more and get with more people and engage in activities, but it was not the way she was put together.
Yeah,
So
I get that because, like I said, my mother is over there too. I mean, right now she still has her other house, and so I've told her repeatedly to use it like I do my she shed. Go there and have crafts or whatever because she still owns it, and so I'm doing. I know I annoy her, and by the way, she will listen to this podcast later on, so I am sure that I will get reamed for this tomorrow. But, anyways, I am constantly pushing her like that, and I can be annoying, but I think it's very important. Very important. There you go, important. Get my tongue not twist around my words.
yeah,
I
I
think it's very
agree.
important, yeah, to keep your mind active, find something interest and also when we reach a certain age, I don't know if it's still in play, but I know at my last check-in on something like this, I know colleges, once you reach a certain age, you can go back to school for almost free or pretty low to be, low in cost to be able to do so. I
Yes,
just think it's. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, in fact, colleges more and more are getting into this because they thrived during the baby boom, and they are now facing the demographic fall off the cliff in terms of young people. So they need to find new bodies to put in seats, and they're looking at older Americans to do that.
Mhm.
Something else I was gonna mention when you're talking about the importance of doing something else, a lot of people have trouble with making the transition. It's 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 not an easy transition under the best of circumstances, and many people, especially those who poured everything they had into their career, find this big hole in their lives when they leave it and need something to fill it, and figuring out what that is sometimes takes a lot of work.
Mm. Yeah, I can relate. I didn't have a, let's say, career. I took some classes to learn how to to do aerobics. I taught aerobics. I was a McDonald's manager back in the day. And when I started having kids, well, a child, and then I watched my nieces and nephews, and then after they reached a certain age, my husband said, "So why don't you write a book?" Because I used to make homemade Christmas cards and send them out to in bulk. I would write little stories and put in there. I always
Mhm.
did some sort of writing.
Nice.
And thank you. And I always had short stories and all that. And my husband said once our only child graduated and left the house, he said, "Why don't you start writing?" And I was like, "I can't write a book." Like, I could do short stories. I can't write a book. He just kept nagging me about it, and that ended up where I'm at now. I've written 15 books. I
Wow.
run it all thing yeah, don't get too impressed. I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but I write for myself. I do publish them, and I've taught myself how to do the audibles. I taught myself how to do the podcast. I've done graphics for the book covers, and then I taught myself to do them better. So I've updated, you know what I mean, covers and stuff. But that's what I think that's the reason I'm so grabbed on to continually learning, teaching yourself to do something
Right.
because
That's
I think
it.
it's important. It keeps your mind active, and that's another reason why I started to do the podcast was because and I know this seems amazing because I roll over my tongue now, but it used to be worse, and I think that it makes me more articulate to have these conversations with people that you may not have interaction with on the daily. And so even in that, just like what you said, going out and being around people, to me, that's where my podcast allows me to do that, if that makes any sense.
It does, and one of the things that people who know about this stuff say is that curiosity is a key element. The people who stay curious are the ones who are the least likely to get dementia in the end
Mhm.
because they're continuing to grow their brain cells and add neurons and
Mhm.
find new ways of connecting things. So
Right.
I hope to heck I'm one of those people.
I hope so too, and I hope as well for myself. So when we talk about you and I's experiences, and I'm sure you've mentioned a few, but what point in your experiences did you realize that the traditional idea of retirement was not for you?
It came up kind of gradually because when I was so much looking forward to retiring because I had not had a particularly linear career. There were a lot of potholes in the road, in other words. So when I got to retirement age, I said, "Yippee, the everlasting summer vacation." But it quickly became apparent that that was not gonna be very fulfilling. In the beginning, I thought I would be a novelist, and that was something I had been dreaming about since I was 7 or 8 years old. And I actually sat down and I wrote 2 novels in 4 years. They're still on a shelf because I haven't been
Ah,
able to get anyone else interested in them. But the life was not satisfying because, when you do a project that takes that long,
mhm.
you don't get feedback. And you work on it for a year or 2, and you don't know at the end whether it's a word worthwhile piece of work or junk. You have no clue.
Mhm.
And after 4 years of that, I said, "I've gotta find another way." I joined a what was essentially a long distance group of creatives online that was hosted by a woman who was kind of a career person, inspiration person, the whole bit, and it was like a writers group, except half the people were in England.
Mm.
But it was very exciting to be around other creative people, and a month or 2 after doing that, somebody said, "Well, if you don't like writing the long stuff, why don't you do short stuff?" And I said, "Duh, why didn't I think of that?" And that's when I started doing the newsletter. It's an
Mhm.
online newsletter that people get in their email, and what do you know? Every week I get 7 or 8 people writing back saying, "Oh, this was good," or "This surprised me," or "This reminds me," or "Let me add to that." Feedback, it's wonderful, and I
Mhm.
actually feel like I'm talking to my audience and having a dialogue and, creating something that has an impact on someone else's life, so that's great.
Right. I
But it
can I Go ahead.
but it took 4 years for me to find that, and that seems not to be unusual when people first stop their careers and look for something else to do. We often think we know what we want, and when we get it, we're surprised that that wasn't it, and we keep pumping around. One thing that has evolved recently is a profession called retirement coaching, and
Uh-huh.
this has been very helpful to a lot of people. In the traditional sense, when you say retirement planning, people assume that it means financial, and this is a group of people who see the emotional and the psychological aspects of retirement as important as the financial ones, and they really help people who are lost kind of find their way through this thicket, figure out what it is that will really satisfy them and have meaning for them.
So, when you talked about your book sitting on a shelf, I can relate. My first book wasn't the first book I published, it was the 3rd that I
Mhm.
published, and it sat on the shelf for a year. That's when my husband was pestering me, "You gotta write a book, you gotta write a book." And I wrote one, and it sat for, well, a couple years, actually, for the first 2 I published. And so I can relate. And when you talked about your writing the first 2 books, had you ever thought about self-publishing?
Not at that time. No.
Mhm.
I still thought self-publishing was a cop out, and I was gonna find a traditional publisher, and I was gonna find an agent and all of that stuff. And I have 80 rejection slips to prove that I tried, but just didn't go anywhere. The book that I just turned up, The Afterwork, is self-published, and what an impressive experience that was by comparison, to have
Mhm.
full control and unfortunately, to be my own salesperson. So,
In all honesty, if you I don't know how many authors that you've actually, I mean, I know you said you had a little group that you were a part of that was mainly
right,
based in Europe, but back in the day, and I'm no longer on Facebook, but back in the day when I was, we had quite a bit of groups because 'cause I've been writing for some time. And I started, like I said, I think in my 30s, and I'm in my 50s now, so that gives you a little bit of graph on that. Anyways, a lot of things that we figured out is even when you're self-published, unless you are a very high profile name, a lot of the times what you're going to find is that you have to do it on your own.
right,
You might get it published, they might put it in the thing, they might put it out, but a lot of the times you are in charge of your own social media. Again, unless you're a big name supported by the company or the publisher, and there are a lot of small presses too, but even with that, a lot of the times it relies on the author themselves. And there's a lot of expense in doing your own book that I don't think people really understand. There's editors and graphic designs. My first book, let me ballpoint this. My first book, and let me know if this sparks any bells with you. My first book, I put over 5 grand into,
Mm.
and that was and trust me, I did not get that back, okay? It didn't come back in sales or anything like that. Now I sold, still do, but I don't push my work as much as I should. Like I said, it's rewarding for me in itself that I write it. But with that said, I had an editor, I had a graphic designer actually do the cover, which inspired the rest of the books in that series, but I did them myself based on what he had given me, and then that was a learning experience because that was software to teach myself how to do graphic software, to do the imagery, things I had no experience in doing, but it was fun, and that rolled over into a online website that we had for a magazine, which we had over I think we had what'd we have, Laura? I think it was like 300 authors that were a part of, and we would do an online thing, and then we had people write their books and stuff, but it's that trial and error. If you never try to put it out there, you won't
Exactly.
grow, you know? And so if I had any encouragement for you for those 2 books, I would, like, break those babies back out, and that's another thing I would be working on. Because even if a bad review, it can still be a good review, you know? Like
Right.
and I've told this story before. I had one person write me a 5-paragraph review on Amazon, ripping me up and down for my book, and the very last paragraph said, "But where's book 5?" So, uh
Interesting.
yeah, I don't read reviews anymore, but, I did at that time when I was young and into it. I was like, I mean young, that don't mean young the number, I mean young as far as a writer is concerned.
Right.
I was all into it. I was like, "Ah," and the first 20 or 30 are great because they're usually people you know, or they're other authors that you shared your work with, and it's great. But after a while, more reviews will bring in other people, and that's when reality kicks you in the butt.
Mm.
But that's all good, you know? Not everything is going to appeal to everybody. I mean,
Right.
since you've written yours, have the positives overwhelmed the negatives, or have you found yourself getting a mixture of both, or is it both supportive?
Everything has been supportive. I don't think I've exposed myself enough to get negative reviews yet, but I'm getting, a few sales, and I'm not expecting to ever break even, but that wasn't the point. And
Mm.
as you say, it was a tremendous learning experience,
Ah,
and
yeah.
I hope that if when the second book comes out, I won't have to repeat as many of the mistakes as I
Yeah.
made the first time. But as I was saying earlier, this is what I think the afterwork can be. You
Mhm.
can make mistakes and do trial and error, and it doesn't matter. The
No.
whole world is not depending on you
Exactly.
to be a success or to reach that goal or anything else. It's really all for you and
Mhm.
what makes meaning for you.
I agree 100%. I agree totally with that. And it doesn't even when you talk about after work, that doesn't even have to be when you reach a certain age. You could start that now. You could start that in your 20s. You can start that in your 30s.
True.
You can start that at any point in your life after your day job or, go home and find something else that makes your heart beat more. Because, I mean, let's be honest, it's pretty sad if you're in a job that you absolutely hate and you don't have anything you're aspiring for. You know what I mean?
That's hard.
Yeah, it is. It I understand it completely because I had quite a few jobs that, like, sapped my soul. It just took it out of me. But you do what you do for your paycheck, but that doesn't mean you have to settle for less after that 8 hours is done, you know?
Right.
So, when you talk about retirement is dead, what do you really mean by that?
I mean that the idea that you leave your career and your life is practically over,
Mhm.
and that you can afford to spend the rest of your life in leisure is dead. it's unaffordable,
Mhm,
and it's a waste of good years because, I mean, in the old model, most people didn't live very long past retirement if they made it to retirement age at all. People died in their 60s and in their early 70s
mhm,
or sooner. And today we're looking at lives that, a number of us will live to be 100 more than ever. And really, it's just a different life stage. I think the best way to say it is that there is now a new life stage that comes after career that is an extended period, and we haven't come up with a name for it. My name is the afterwork. Other people have called it the third quarter or the, you know, overtime or something.
mhm,
Nobody has called it sudden death, and that's good. But it's a whole new period, and it's a difference in the way we live our lives and the way our lives are structured. And we're all pioneers in it because we've never experienced this demographic fact before where there are as many old people as there are young people. It's very new,
right,
and the world has not made its adjustments to it yet. And so we're forced to kind of pioneer it and make our mistakes and figure out what the territory looks like, which can be
right.
exciting.
So, with the idea of endless leisure
Mhm.
being taken out of context, how can someone just start figuring out their after work? And what may that look like?
Well, I think it calls for some introspection, and some people are better at this than others. But you really need to understand what makes you tick, what gives you meaning and purpose, and figure out a way to continue to do that. And it can look like a lot of things. For me, it was writing for other people. I mean, writing for me personally, as opposed to a career where I was writing for other people as a journalist and then as a marketing communicator.
Mhm,
For other people, it can be teaching after, doing something in the business world and then feeling like you have something to give to a new generation. It could be really whatever is in your heart that makes you feel it gives you a reason to wake up in the morning. So it's very personal as to what it looks like. And it's okay to be wrong and to find something better.
right. So, as our last question for the night, and with the last part they're saying about how personal it could be for someone that's feeling possibly uncertain about aging, what hope or an encouragement would you offer?
Well, first of all, there are people who can help you figure it out. The retirement coaches profession, which I mentioned, or other, life coaches, and they'll help you, dig deeper into, what you've always wanted or what you were not afraid to admit that you wanted and what experiences in the past had given you joy. And the other thing I'll say again is that you can make mistakes and it's okay. You have done all the adulting things you had to do. You paid the mortgage, you paid the bills, you kept the lights on, you raised a family, all of those things. And now people are not depending on you to always bring home the bacon.
Mhm.
There's and it and you are no longer burdened by all those responsibilities, so you have a chance to really do something for yourself. And it's very healthy physically and mentally for you to take that chance.
Right. I get that. I get that. I wanna thank you so much, Don, for being here. It's been very enlightening.
Oh, thank you, Ari. It's been a fun conversation.
Oh, well, you can always come back if you decide to even if there's another book on the horizon, like, "Yo, Ari, I like to hit you up."
It would be fun to do that.
Wonderful. I look forward to it. I wanna thank you so much, and I wanna thank our listeners. As always, guys, until next time, bye-bye for now.